We have a big coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next few days. That could bring us some storming, and an old region 2665 that gave us that huge solar storm a couple weeks ago and fired off a massive superstorm while on the sun's backside. That region's now rotating back into Earth view. Will there be anything left of it? Those stories and more in the news this week. Solar activity is going to pick up a bit this week. We have a big coronal hole that's going to be rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next few days. That could send us some marginally fast wind that could bump us up to storm levels and maybe even through the weekend. But that's not the big story. The big story is old region 2665, the one that gave us that big solar storm a couple weeks ago and fired off some massive solar storms on the backside. It has survived its transit on the sun's backside and is now rotating back into Earth view. Now, we haven't gotten a really good look at it yet because it's still kind of occulted off on the limb like that. It's kind of hard to see things on the sun's edge, but it looks like it's died down a bit. And I don't blame it. I'd be tired too, firing that many solar storms. So we'll see whether or not it's still an M-flare player here in the next few days and whether or not it's still a risk for more solar storming. Switching to our MSR threat meter, you can see as soon as region 2665 departed behind the sun's west limb, everything began to quiet down when it came to the X-ray flux, and it's remained that quiet basically the entire time that region has rotated on the sun's backside. Now that it's becoming visible again, you're seeing the pops, the little mini flares starting, and even a C-class flare. Now things are quiet at the moment, but you can't really trust it with this region. It's now been renumbered 2670 because it's a new version of it coming into Earth view, and we'll be continuing to watch it. So you ham radio operators, you're not in the clear yet. You could have a chance for some radio blackouts. Switching to your solar storm conditions, you can see we had that moderate storm hit us back on the 16th, and it gave us beautiful aurora all around the world, and it came from region 2665, which is the reason why we're keeping a close eye on it this time around. Meanwhile, things have kind of died back down. We had a couple pockets of activity from a little bit of fast wind here and there, but pretty much things have been at unsettled conditions, and that will continue for the next couple days until this new pocket of fast wind will hit us probably around the weekend. Now let's get back to the big story, which is region 2665, and talk about what happened on the sun's backside. Now this is stereo A, it's our backside monitor. You can see here's Earth, here's the sun, and here's stereo A staring at the sun from behind. Now if you look and you can see, just entering stereo's view is that big sunspot. And if you just watch it, bam! Do you see it right there? It let loose a massive eruption. This is that superstorm we were talking about. You could actually see it as a big halo, even from Earth's perspective, but it was headed away from Earth, not toward us, luckily. From stereo's vantage point, it actually caused what we call an asymmetric halo. That's because the eruption wasn't directed really toward stereo. It was actually directed more toward Mars. Now, switching to our prediction model, Enlil, this is NASA's version of the model because they worry about other planets other than Earth. In this case, namely Mars. You can see this massive solar storm launching from the sun, and you can see Mars is almost east of center. Stereo A isn't even supposed to see this storm. It's supposed to miss it. Now, the fact that Stereo A actually ended up seeing this storm shows you that it was even bigger than the models anticipated. Now, there's been a lot of lively discussion as to whether or not this event is a Carrington-class event or not. And if you don't follow Halo CME and Chris Out of Space on Twitter, you really should. Now, thanks to Halo CME, we have this wonderful graphic in which he compared the Carrington-class event from 2012 to this event that occurred just a few days ago on July 23rd. Now, as you can see here, you're actually looking at the stereo and looking at the locations of stereo as well as the direction of the solar storm, which is labeled CME, and an arrow that points where the center of that solar storm went. Now, as you can see on the 2012 event, stereo A, which is that red dot right there, actually went almost right through the center of that solar storm. But in this case, stereo was located way off to the east of this event, and so it barely grazed it. Now, the interesting thing that we have here is that we know that these solar storms are much stronger and much faster at the center of the storm than at the edge. And that is where the dialogue comes in. Because this storm was not fast enough to be considered a Carrington-class event as it was seen by stereo A. But if stereo A had actually hit the center of it, So the takeaway from this is that even though this has been an extremely low activity cycle for the sun, we have seen two superstorms, one that has been a Carrington-class event and one that is nearly so. And this has sparked a lively discussion in the scientific community as well, led by people like Dr. Scott McIntosh, who argue that it's actually the low activity cycles that spawn these large extreme events. Now, regarding that superstorm that was launched on the 23rd, people have asked me if it had hit Earth, what kind of impact would it have had? And I argue that if this superstorm had hit Earth head on, I mean a direct hit, it could have rivaled the 1989 event that caused the Hydro-Quebec grid to shut down. And it left millions of people without power for over 9 hours. It even caused the Toronto Stock Exchange to close. And all of that was before we had smartphones and GPS. So imagine what it could do today. Switching to your solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we're pretty quiet right now, but we are anticipating the hit from that high-speed wind. It should hit us sometime around the weekend. At high latitudes, expect active conditions with a chance of minor storming. At mid-latitudes, probably only a chance for active conditions. This fast wind isn't all that fast, so expect it to be pretty mild overall. Although you aurora photographers, you might get a chance to see some aurora, but it just may not drop as far south into mid-latitudes as if we were strongly storming. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, region 2665 has re-entered the picture. It is now labeled 2670, so don't be confused by that sunspot number there. That is the old region 2665. And because it's back into Earth view, NOAA has immediately upped the M-flare risk to about 20%. Right now we're not seeing it being a big M-flare player, but you never know with this region. It's been pretty unpredictable. So expect a possible chance for radio blackouts over the next few days. We'll see kind of whether or not it grows or decays. It looks like it might continue to decay. If so, that means the risk will decrease over the week. Also, the solar flux has risen a little bit, but not all that much. So expect marginal conditions on the bands. So the space weather this week is picking up a bit. We have a coronal hole that's rotating into the Earth strike zone here in the next few days. It should be sending us some fast wind pretty much in time for the weekend. So you aurora photographers, get your shutter fingers ready. You might be able to catch a few shots. Now the big story, of course, is region 2665 that survived its backside passage around the sun. It's now been relabeled 2670, and it had fired some monsters on the backside, so it looks a bit tired now. We'll see whether or not it continues to be an M-flare player and has enough moxie to send us some more solar storms, but we don't really know that yet, so all of us are kind of on edge. So you ham radio operators and GPS operators, just be prepared for, maybe some issues here and there, but right now it looks like everything's going to be pretty minor. I'm Tamitha Skov. Thank you for watching.